morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Well, more than one enthusiastic cowboy caught up in the heat of the battle of trying to capture a renegade bull has let his cowboy pride overrule his cowboy logic.
My horse was pulled up against a tree and everything was tight, and as soon as my horse started to kind of go down, my saddle was a bit loosey. I popped my dallies and
then guess what happened? That's Matt Robertson, outstanding ranch rodeo bronc rider, good all-around hand, and fast-rising star of Western music, and I'm glad to have him as my guest today. And for those of us who have been in the business of raising cattle for a long time, Baxter Black has some good analogies.
Being in the cattle business is sort of like receiving news that your rich old bachelor uncle died and left his entire estate to the Newfoundland Dog Foundation.
On the Rangeland News, we've uncovered some relevant issues and some help for the Roundup cook.
Oven cooking meatballs at the same temperature should be done for 20 minutes for frozen meatballs.
And we've dug up another old classic song of the West and found some information about its origins. And on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, the subject is sometimes when you're trying really hard to get the job done with cattle, we lose track of our horsemanship. And I'll visit with this good cowboy after a track from his sensational new CD. This is Matt Robertson.
On an old happy horse wearing a bright yellow slicker, riding in the road ditch late in the night. His slicker's a flying, his old horse is trying. Midnight rider riding in my headlights. He worked every job and boys he worked hard. He loved the rodeo, going to the bar. On Highway 13 you see him giving his all, trying to make Winfield the Bucklegs' last call. On an old happy horse wearing a bright yellow slicker, riding in the road ditch late in the night. His slicker's a flying, his old horse is trying. Midnight rider riding in my headlights. You travel on 13 when good folks are in bed. Your eyes are getting heavy, you're shaking your head. Keep your eyes open, you just might see midnight ride of old Dwayne Rigby. On an old happy horse wearing a bright yellow slicker, riding in the road ditch late in the night. His slicker's a flying and his old horse is trying. Midnight rider riding in my headlights. On an old happy horse wearing a bright yellow slicker, riding in the road ditch late in the night. His slicker's a flying, his old horse is trying. Midnight rider riding in my headlights.
Matt Robertson from his latest CD, Making History, and glad to have this good young cowboy in for a visit today. Now, Matt, how long did it take you to get this latest CD finished?
took about a year and a half complete to start to finish, and probably would have been a lot quicker if I just concentrated only on that, but the guy's busy doing life too, so.
So what all is taking up your life now besides your music?
Oh, had some big changes in the last couple of years, so I started just kind of moving around, traveling around quite a bit, trying to pursue my music, and spent some time back in Wyoming with my brother and some family friends down there, and spent the last winter, 4 months I worked down there, a couple different ranches, and Then came back through the summer, and I spent some time down around Medicine Hat starting colts for some people. And just recently I moved into Lomond grazing in Lomond, Alberta, and start there April 1st. So that'll be my first full-time, and well, it's not absolutely full-time, but it's the longest running job I've had for a long time besides working for myself. So
how big a chunk of country will you be looking after there?
There's 64,000 acres there, and they look after about 1,900 pairs through the summer from middle of May to end of October.
Cows, calves, and bulls?
Yeah. They keep the bulls and feed them in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that a lot of open country? Lomond, it seems to me, is that bald-headed rolling prairie without a tree for miles?
Yeah, it's pretty rolling. It really reminds me of the Sandhills in Nebraska. It's really good hard grass country, and it's a little windy, and the Bow River runs through it there, and there's some neat things, I think there might be one tree on the whole outfit, so.
I don't know if I'd make out too well in a place like that. Now, the first problem would be I'm so used to the mountain tops and the creek beds and the canyons and all the landmarks. And even if it's an overcast, cloudy day, I get a pretty good idea where I am in the bush. But I get out there where every section looks just like the one you rode across. I don't know how you tell one from the other.
Yeah, well, thank God that some white man built a power line across it, so you can always see that. Yeah. But no, I know what you mean. I grew up in Wyoming near a mountain range, and I didn't realize how much, even when I lived up northwest of Edmonton, the mountains are way out there, and on a clear day you can see them, but I know what it's like to always have that landmark. So it's going to be, it's going to be good, though. I like the open.
Yeah. Is it cross-fenced into smaller pastures or pretty big pieces?
There's a lot of cross-fencing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like you to come up with a cowboy and adventure or two for us after the break, and then we'll play another one from that CD when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. It sure does my heart good to see some really good young men and women embracing a line of work with cattle and horses and honoring our ranching traditions in the cowboy code. Matt Robertson's a fine example, and this good young cowboy is visiting today. Now, Matt, a lot of us have set out in the fall looking for those last few bulls that didn't come in off the range with the cows, and a lot of us have sometimes let our cowboy pride overrule our cowboy logic when we find them. Now, have you got some recollections?
I do recall when I worked at Medicine Lake up in the bush there in Winfield, we were gathering bulls in the fall, and anyways, I took after this one. We had two Charolais bulls, and one went one way and one went the other, and if you ever handled bulls in the bush, you can't just ride wherever you want, so they kind of go where they go, and you follow along and do the best you can. And anyway, this one particular bull got into a pasture that we called the West Bush for a good reason, and he got down in the trees, and I was riding kind of a green horse, and we got down in the bush, and he kind of got bushed up and turned around and charged me and smashed me up against a tree and my horse and everything. So I kind of thought maybe I'd try something different, so I took some long sticks and I sharpened the end, and I kind of put one over here and one over there. And anyway, I went around with this bull doing a little bit of jousting for a little while.
Were you still on your horse?
Yeah, and then he took to the open, but I knew by the way he was traveling he didn't want to leave. He was just sucked up against the trees, so being the smart guy I was, I jerked my rope down and roped him, and he went into the tree.
Good choice.
Yeah, I thought I was really going to be a cowboy that day. And he got into the trees, and by the time I got everything stopped, my horse was pulled up against a tree, and everything was tight. And anyway, as soon as my horse started to kind of go down, my saddle was a bit loose. I popped my dallies, and by that time I was kind of frustrated, and I guess you could say I was angry, and so I bailed off on foot, and I went running through the bushes after this bull, and I caught the end of my rope and got it around a tree and got him stopped, and he choked there for a little while, and then he got mad and charged me, and when he went by, he hit the end of the rope, and my rope broke. So I happened to have another metal Hondu in my pocket, so I tied it into this about 20-foot rope, and I headed for my horse. And then I thought, all of a sudden the light came on. Maybe I should start using my head. So I tied my rope back on my saddle, and I rode in quiet, and I found this bull. And I don't really know what mountain lions sound like, but I was trying to sound like one, and I was making wolf sounds and grizzly bear growls. And the more I did that, the more that sucker's head came up, and he got kind of nervous. And about 20 minutes of me following him around, growling and stuff, he lit out and headed all the way to headquarters, and I just followed him in. So maybe I used my head, I don't know.
That might have been a little better than having him on the end of about a 20-foot rope or 15 feet from your horse.
I spared myself some agony and my horse too.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's reminds me of I have a few broken ropes, and it's not that hard to get your rope on a bull, but once you do, then things get interesting. I've gone sideways through the bush a few times like that, and now finally kind of get him where I want him to be, and now I got to get my rope off of this son of a gun. And that's something we'll talk about at some other time. Right now, here's another track from Matt's Making History CD.
Cinch my rig on a bucking horse, and he kicks and fights. I feel a familiar feeling coming on. I push it back one more time, 'cause I've been doing this way too long. Broken bones and opportunities I've missed remind me that I had dreams when I was young. That someday I'd find glory. I never dreamed it would come to this. That someday I'd be too old to carry on. And the trail left by a falling star is gone in an instant. It only shines so brightly for so long. And as I hold my thoughts together and I climb into the saddle, I hear the latch slide open and I'm gone. Cut my teeth on a bucking horse when I was 14. Though I landed hard, I never cried. Just wiped the blood from my face and I got up again. Mama feared that look in my eyes. Leaving work behind me, sleeping at the wheel. I did not eat so I could pay my fees. If St. Peter walked on water, then I could ride this roan hurricane. I keep telling myself that I just gotta believe. And the trail left by a falling star is gone in an instant. It only shines so brightly for so long. And as I hold my thoughts together and I climb into the saddle, I hear the latch slide open, then I'm gone. There's a pole corral on the sagebrush flat, I see it in my mind. Dust rises high into the sky, where a cowboy's working horse in the hot desert sun. He throws his rope as a roan runs by. And the trail left by a falling star is gone in an instant. It only shines so brightly for so long. And as I hold my thoughts together and I climb into the saddle, I hear the latch slide open and I'm gone. And as I climb into the saddle and I feel him breathe beneath me, I hear the latch slide open and I'm gone.
You must have had some great horses over the years. I know some of your songs have, talked about your favorite horse, and you're going to ride him straight up on the bridle and everything. And can you tell me just a little bit about some of the good ones you've had?
Yeah, if I was to point out one in particular, for time's sake, you probably saw her at the ranch rodeo a few times. I had a little bay mare. She was Docalina bred, and she was actually out of the stud that came from Douglas Lake there. And when I moved up to Alberta, she was 6 years old, and they hadn't started her yet. And she never was bronky, didn't buck, but she was pretty tough-minded. And but man, I rode her, and I didn't know what I was doing. Or at least I say that. I just did the best I could, but I was really into wanting to make a bridle horse and go straight from the hackamore into the bridle. And so I never did ride her with anything other than a hackamore or a spade. And some guys said maybe, she's so tough and kind of ignorant, and you should let her go down the road. And I just kept riding her, and she was tough. And, she became my best horse, and she's the subject of a lot of my songs, but she's the type of horse where you could take her to a branding or go sorting or to a ranch rodeo, and when you got done that day, you thought you were pretty handy. You thought you were kind of the star, but actually it was the horse that made all the difference, because she was just that type of horse, and she was pretty to boot. So
how long did it take for her to really, where you felt her really getting it together, really coming around?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I've always liked to ride a little bit older horses from the beginning, and people ride colts 2-3 years old, and that's fine I think to get them started, but a lot of guys camp on them pretty hard, and I think, that horse, it took probably 2 years before I could really say that I had a lot of faith that she was going to make it. And I know that's a lot of time to put in when you're talking about money, but when you're not talking about money and you're talking about quality, I'd say a couple of years. She came into herself.
And that was pretty steady work in those 2 years.
Yeah, she got rode pretty hard the first summer and winter, and then she got a little bit lame on me. I turned her out for about a half a summer, and then just calving and pasture work. And, pasture riding in those community pastures, you're roping and doctoring a lot. And in calving time, you're doing a lot of pairing out, a lot of sorting and stuff like that, and it just makes them so good.
Yeah, sure does. Well, we'll have more from Matt Robertson in a little while, and next, Baxter Black comes up with a bunch of great analogies about what being in the cattle business is really like. A song we always try to work in before all the branding's done, and then it's the Rangeland News, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, with a little peek at being in the cattle business.
When you go to B&W Hitch Factory for a visit, you won't need a passport or a Chinese translator. Why? Because their hitches are made right here in the heart of America. Sometimes that gets lost in the whir of our global economy, but lots of American businesses have survived the recession without cheapening their products or outsourcing jobs. Instead, they chose to stay at home, share the work, and spread the benefits. Learn more about what B&W stands for by going to AmericanMadeHitch.com.
20 things that are somewhat like being in the cattle business. Number 1, being handcuffed and forced to watch someone butcher hogs on your living room carpet. Parking your new pickup at the end of the driveway, knowing it will be stolen by morning. Playing poker with Donald Trump, Al Capone, and Bruce Babbitt. Being the public relations manager for Ted Turner, Ted Kaczynski, or Ted Kennedy. Being Bill Clinton. Watching a train go into a tunnel that you know is blocked at the other end. Going to Del Rio for Cinco de Mayo and taking your cross-country skis. Going to Las Vegas with a $20 bill and no return ticket. 2-man bungee jumping with your banker while your cattle buyer holds the other end of the line. Getting tear gassed and enjoying it is sort of like being in the cattle business, too. Losing the $6 million lottery by one number. Buying stock in Chevronol the day before the fire. discovering you're related to Saddam Hussein, seeing your face on a dartboard at the regional IRS office, finding out that FBI and Earth First have you under surveillance. Being in the cattle business is sort of like receiving news that your rich old bachelor uncle died and left his entire estate to the Newfoundland Dog Foundation. Discovering that the only way your assets and liabilities could balance is if you married Bill Gates. Going to the barber and saying, "Be creative." Playing pool on the kitchen table. Losing your brakes at the top of Wolf Creek Pass. And finally, being bitten by your own dog is somewhat like being in the cattle business.
This is Baxter Black
On Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan.
brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
Coming up on the Rangeland News, we've uncovered some pretty amazing developments, and the final item might be a little subtle, but cowboys and ranchers will get it, I'm sure. Right after a song I like to play before the last of the calves are branded and turned out, here's Brand Hill.
Wintertime is long on the mountain. Snow flies for 9 long months a year. When the warm south wind blows, every cowboy knows spring around up time is finally here. So call the boys at the Big A-double-L. Call Mike and Jeff and Jason and the crew. And come the break of dawn, we'll be saddled up and gone. 600 head for the day's through. 'Cause there's nothing like the Wasatch in the springtime. Nothing like the freedom in the air. And there ain't nothing better than dragging calves to the fire. And there's nothing like the smell of burning hair. Pass by like the wind, and the boys have loaded up and they're heading home. But come this time next year, you can bet they'll be right here until the cattle and the West are dead and gone. 'Cause there's nothing like the Wasatch in the springtime. Nothing like the freedom in the air. Nothing better than dragging calves to the fire. And there's nothing like the smell of burning hair. No, there's nothing like the smell of burning hair. Nothing like the Wasatch in the springtime.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, ground beef. Well, we use it in so many ways. Burgers, obviously, meatloaf, and Billy makes terrific hamburger soup, and then meatballs. But there have been some concerns about the safety of ground beef if it's not cooked properly, and USDA reporter Rod Bain takes us through the process of making meatballs safe.
Determining how to best cook meatballs, whether homemade or store-bought, refrigerated or frozen, to kill foodborne bacteria can be a challenge. So USDA researchers in Pennsylvania conducted tests on meatball cooking methods and times to figure when the ground meat in a meatball reaches the optimum internal temperature to kill harmful bacteria, 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Anna Portofet says cooking meatballs in a deep fryer at 350 degrees Fahrenheit.
You should cook at least for 5 minutes for refrigerated and about 9 minutes for frozen.
Oven cooking meatballs at the same temperature should be done for 20 minutes for frozen meatballs and 12.5 minutes for refrigerated meatballs to assure a properly cooked and safe product. As researcher John Luchansky adds,
people will put them in a convection oven, some people will put them in a deep fryer, and that will also influence both the time and the endpoint temperature, how quick it gets there. So I think those were the other key points of the study.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Finding an arrowhead, a bison's skull, or a circle of stones that could be a teepee ring, well, these kind of things are not uncommon on Alberta farms and ranches. And if you find something like this and you want to know more about it and what to do with it, you can take a picture of it and leave the specimen undisturbed, and then you can call the Report a Find hotline at 780-438-8506 or email a photo to archaeologicalsurvey@courtneylakevold@gov.ab.ca.images, and that's where it'll be reviewed, and an archaeologist might meet with the person reporting, visit the site, and determine the historical value of what you found. Well, Brazilian beef exporting group ABIEC has kept its 2017 export projections unchanged at 1.5 million tons, despite a sharp drop in shipments caused by a federal police probe into alleged corruption and bribes targeting food sanitation inspectors in Brazil. And an interview by the president of the company acknowledged that exports fell over 40% in terms of both volume and revenue, as a number of countries imposed temporary bans on Brazilian beef. He said shipments were expected to pick up after Brazil's successful campaign to lift bans imposed in many of the country's export markets. A robotic kitchen assistant named Flippy, developed by Misco Robotics, recently completed its first day of cooking burgers at the Cali Burger fast food chain in California. Now, the software was built for adaptability so it can be trained to help with other mundane, dirty, or dangerous tasks in commercial kitchens. The robot's onboard cameras and sensors help the robot determine when the burger is ready to place on a bun and hand off to a human worker to add the condiments. Misco Robotics aims to install Flippy robots in 50 restaurants by the end of 2019. And still on the cutting edge of what this technology is doing, scientists from the Hong Kong Baptist University recently developed lip-reading software that may eventually be able to replace all types of fingerprint-based passwords or typed passwords. The security software would ask the user to speak or mouth a password into a device's camera, and recognition software would grant access once it reads the user's lips. The team's lead scientist, Chuang Yui Ming, believes lip movement is more secure than biometric security, otherwise known as fingerprint authentication, as modern learning systems can accurately distinguish the difference between two people saying the same password. The lip-reading software received a U.S. patent in 2015 and may be available for use in the near future. Now, I wonder how that would work for Baxter Black, or me, or other fellows that have fairly good-sized mustaches. Coming up at the BC Livestock Co-op, May 25th, the regular sale in Williams Lake, May 26th in Vanderhoof, the regular sale, and of course May the 30th, the regular sale in Kamloops. Should be lots of good grass yearlings at that sale. Meanwhile, across the Rockies at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, 2 horse sales a month. And for information on these and their pre-sort sales, you can go to InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that brings us down to the final item. Now, if you are from Vancouver or San Francisco or Toronto or have never had any experience with horses, this might be lost on you. However, I know most of our listeners will understand it. You see, at a big horse show last week, thieves apparently broke into the stabling area sometime during the night, and they made off with about 50 expensive halters and halter shanks. By Monday, most of the halters had been found and returned, but police, I hear, are still out looking for leads. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, the subject is sometimes when we're trying hard to get the job done with cattle, we lose sight of our horsemanship. And there's more from Matt Robertson, too, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Working with your horse when the pressure is on, trying to get the cattle gathered, moved, or sorted, sometimes we can focus so much on getting the job done that we lose sight of our horsemanship, and some bad habits can creep in. That's what I'll be discussing on the Irvine Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File. And in getting the job done on a long, tough day, some cowboy coffee can help. Here's Joni Harms.
The first thing that one does when you wake before the sun does, get the fire going. Won't be long till you feel the heat. Find a spot and take a seat till the coals start glowing. Then pull out the granite pot. Poor old thing's been used a lot. Don't look like much, but just you wait and see. Pour some grounds from a leather poke. Add a little taste of old wood smoke. Man, that's cowboy coffee. Every day we all get up, find our favorite old tin cup, pour a taste of heaven. Plenty grub for all the crew, throw it down with a cup or two, saddle up by 7. Head on out, there's work to do, roping, riding, branding too. Every day's as tough as it can be. Chasing strays and hanging wire, work all day and you still ain't tired. Man, that's cowboy coffee. Don't ask these boys about a latte. Cowboy coffee comes just one way. Strong enough to make you stand up straight and talk about flavor now, just you wait. After supper time is done, still got time for a little fun. Take it slow and easy. Sitting around the fireside, singing songs and telling lies. One more pot of coffee. Then some young buck starts to nag. Joe, go on to your saddlebag. Pull out that bottle everybody's seen. Pour in some of that 90 proof. Warm us up down to our boots. Man, that's cowboy coffee. Man, that's cowboy coffee.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Experience the true spirit of the West at Canada's largest Western store, Irvine Tack and Western Wear. If you need a curb strap or a 4-star gooseneck trailer, you'll find it here. A saddle for every rider. Cutters, reiners, penners, trainers, working ranch cowboys, ropers. They have over 1,200 in stock. And they have Western wear for the entire family. And how about a gift card? Shop online at irvinesaddles.ca. Free shipping on orders of over $100. irvinesaddle.ca, 1-877-946-9494. You know, being a new rider on a cowboy crew is challenging, and if I'd have kept my mouth shut and my ears open years ago, I might have been able to absorb a lot more knowledge from the top hands than I did. When I was a young greenhorn, I wanted to be a cowboy in the worst way, and that's what I was for a while. But thanks to a lot of years of making mistakes and some mentoring from some real good hands, I've finally got some things figured out. By the time I get it all together, I might be too old to climb on a horse. But when I get a chance to help folks learn about handling cattle from horseback, I often see them try so hard to get the job done that they lose track of their horsemanship. You might get the cow stopped or put through the gate, but when you don't work on your horse's foot position and balance, it's easy to pick up bad habits like keeping his weight on his front end when he needs to do a rollback. And I see a lot of newer riders using way too much rein and not enough leg pressure, resulting in their horse's head being high and out of position. Now, the good cowboy and fine horseman Terry Milligan often said, "We always let our horses know when they're doing something wrong, but when we let them know when they've done something right, boy, then they really try hard." In some cases, all that is a release of the reins for a moment to settle and a soft hand on the neck. And the unwritten code of cowboy etiquette extends to always being aware of what the boss is trying to accomplish and knowing where he is at all times. When you're on your horse watching the gate while the cow boss is bringing specific critters out of the herd, hollering, "There she is, boss," is a sure sign that you're a wannabe. You might be trying to help, but in the old days, the cow bosses really resented that kind of behavior, and I was told more than once, "Shut up, kid, I know what I'm doing." As I said before, blaming your horse when things go wrong is another sign of a greenhorn. It takes years of dedication and love of good horses, but when it starts to come together, it's really magic. And for urban saddles and western wear, that's the horse training file. Something else that seems to work wonders is that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. Our horses get it, and I sure like the way they look. Find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. And now let's get back to my guest, Matt Robertson. Will you be using your own horses on this community pasture, this Lomond?
Yeah, I've got 3 geldings right now that are top notch, and then I rode some colts for some folks at Empress last summer, and they've got a couple of 4 coming 5-year-old mares they want to put in a sale, so I'll ride them as well. So I'll dang sure be mounted.
Yeah, and they'll have some real quality time on them by the time fall comes too.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Yeah.
Some of the songs on your new album, can we go over some of the songs and the inspiration for them on there?
Sure.
Making History.
The title track is Making History, and it's kind of a neat story. That's the only song I've ever recorded that I didn't write. And there's a kid up from Evansbury, Alberta, which is up near Wildwood.
At Evansburg?
Evansburg.
Yeah.
And if you ever knew Dan Shalafoo, he rode at Douglas Lake for quite a few years. He's from that country too, but anyway, Greg Vogt wrote that song, and he's out at Douglas Lake right now. And when I needed some help at home and going through some stuff, Greg was just a young kid, and he'd come over and we'd start colts together, and he'd help me do whatever I needed to do. And anyway, one day he'd come in and he'd wrote this song, and he shared it with me, and it brought tears to my eyes to hear a young kid these days with such a passion for the cowboy life. And you know, and Greg, he, you know, where he grew up, I think his mom works at a mill and his dad's in the oil patch, and his grandpa drives some horses and used to farm a bit. But as far as being immersed into a cowboy life, he never was, but he was just born with that instinct in him. And so he wrote Making History, and through the channels of his life, now he's 19 years old and he's living his dream out at Douglas Lake. So
man,
I think that's pretty neat.
Oh, what a great place for him to do. Yeah, that's got to be just the fulfillment of everything he dreamed about doing.
Yeah, he's kind of an old soul, that one.
Oh, that's neat.
Timing was off the day he was born, 100 years too late. Wanting to be a wild outlaw or a cowboy like Will James, but he'd never see the buffalo roam or the battles on the plains. They all say we're a dying breed, but I'll keep supporting the name. Those days might be gone, but they'll never be forgotten, like the sweet burning smell of nylon on cotton, where the chutes are made of wood and cowboys are made of steel. We'll travel down roads that never end and carve our initials in the places we've been in. Always live our cowboy dreams, making history, making history. Long bad winters leave us chilled and cold. We're still punching cows in 4 feet of snow. The cold back ponies that we ride guide us when we're lost in the middle of the night. I won't give up, it's the way I was raised. Learned it from my folks. The only way to keep on striving for success is how my heroes became the best. Those days might be gone, but they'll never be forgotten, like the sweet burning smell of nylon on cotton, where the chutes are made of wood, cowboys are made of steel. We'll travel down roads that never end, and carve our initials in the places we've been, and always live our cowboy dreams, making history, making history. When my time is up, just play this song, turn my ashes loose in the wind. I'll be floating in the air at the end of my dream, just watching another's begin. My days might be gone, but they'll never be forgotten, and I'll still be roping cattle with nylon on cotton, and I'll be riding broncs and chutes that are made of wood. Now I'll be traveling down the road with my cowboy friends, and how we got here we must have reached the end, and there'll be more people chasing their dreams, making history, making history, making history, making history.
Well, if you'd like to order Matt Robertson's music, you can find it at iTunes, and you can also check in at www.facebook.com/cowboy Matt Robertson. Earlier today, Matt told the story that inspired his poem Swamp Jockeys, and you'll hear that poem, as well as this week's classic Song of the West, When the Spirit of the West, continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. This week's classic Song of the West, as far as I can find, was first heard in the 1936 Paramount movie The Trail of the Lonesome Pine. It was written by Louis Alter. He wrote the music and the lyrics by Sidney Mitchell, and they did that in 1936 for the movie. Now, this is one of the very first full-length movies done in Technicolor, and a couple of notable stars in it were Fred MacMurray and Henry Fonda. Now, the song was featured later in a Hopalong Cassidy movie of the same name from 1941, and William Boyd, who of course played Hoppy, had a great speaking voice, but he didn't sing. And this song was done in the movie by Brad King with the Jimmy Wakely Trio. The song has been recorded many, many times. I've even got a pretty good version by Nat King Cole. But this one is from the beautiful tenor voice of Ken Carson. Ken was a pretty good rodeo hand in his younger days and was an outstanding horseman. And when Lloyd Perryman, sometimes known as Mr. Pioneer, the longtime lead singer and tenor with the Sons of the Pioneers, was serving overseas in World War II, Ken Carson did a fine job filling in, and he appeared in 22 movies with the Sons of the Pioneers. So here's Ken Carson and this week's classic Song of the West, Twilight on the Trail.
It's twilight on the trail, and I jog along. The world is like a dream, and the ripple of the stream is my song. It's twilight on the trail, and I rest once more. My ceiling is the sky, and the grass on which I lie is my floor. Never ever have a nickel in my jeans. Never ever have a debt to pay. Still I understand what real contentment means. Guess I was born that way. When it's twilight on the trail and my voice is still, please plant this heart of mine underneath the lonesome pine on the hill. When it's twilight on the
Ken Carson, who was with the Sons of the Pioneers for so many years. And speaking of the Sons of the Pioneers, I can tell you that tickets for their concert at Calvary Community Church in Kamloops on June the 28th are now available at Kamloops Live box office. You can phone 250-374-5483 or email tickets@kamloopslive.ca. Some folks have been wondering if this is just another tribute act. And let me set you straight. These are the real Sons of the Pioneers. They have an unbroken connection right back to the three original members, Roy Rogers, Bob Nolan, and Tim Spencer. And as many of you know, Bob Nolan passed on the secrets of their harmony to Lloyd Perryman, who passed them on to Dale Warren, who in turn passed them on to current trail boss Tommy Nally. They're not another tribute act. These are the real Sons of the Pioneers. And now, in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, here again is Matt Robertson.
Over the hills and through the bogs and into the bush I go. My horse is running plumb away, and my rope I dare not throw. 'Cause if I catch this Charolais bull, he'll drag us until we bleed. And too many times for the lowly bovine I've sacrificed my steed. So I close my eyes and I hug his neck as the branches rake my face. My eyes see blood when we hit the mud, and man, I cuss this place. 'Cause west of the 5th they cleared the land for the sheep and then for the cow. And over the logs and through the bogs is where we're riding now. And if I could breathe fire like a dragon, I'd blow like a hurricane. I'd unsaddle and unbridle my pony, and I'd hop on with a handful of mane, and I'd roar through the willow and poplar, breathing fire into the spruce, like some wild and crazy red devil that somehow Hades turned loose. 'Cause I was born on the cactus prairie. I cut my teeth out on the plains. And any of those boys who say they can best me, well, I'll just hand them the reins. 'Cause they can brag how the desert is wild and tough, and it's bleached many a good cowboy's bones. But the wildest and toughest country of all is out where the swamp jockeys roam.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And again, many thanks to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. If you're looking for a great place to spend some time in the heart of the West, check out meadowsprings.com. And if you need tractor parts, any kind, any year, see Mark's page, bctractorparts.com. And you can get a real sense of the Canadian West in every issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. You can subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com or give them a call, 1-800-943-7336, and Kendra will fix you up right away. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.